those following along online. Welcome to the meeting of the San Carlos Planning and Transportation Commission for August 21, 2023. Will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And a roll call, please. Oh.
Sorry about that.
Okay, we're on just a bit of a hold while we sort out our AV. Sort out some issues with connectivity. So thank you for your patience. We'll be back with you. here has worked, and we'll have a stable presentation. I think I missed confirming that we have no AB 2449 teleconference requests, as all commissioners are here this evening. So just for the record, I think we're clear there. I think with that, roll call, please.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Present.
Commissioner Roof?
Present.
Commissioner Garvey?
Present.
Vice Chair Clements?
Present.
And Chair Iacoponi.
Present. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome back from our summer recess. For those who are following along at home, I think you know how to raise your hand on Zoom, and the instructions for a phone call dial-in are also there. The first agenda item, or number 5, is public comment. Public comment is limited to items not on this evening's agenda. The Commission may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed as allowed by the Brown Act, Government Code Section 54954.2. However, the Commission's general policy is to refer items to staff for attention or have the matter placed on a future Commission agenda for a more comprehensive action or report. I don't see any people here in the audience, so no speaker cards. Lynette, are there any hands raised for public comment?
We have one hands raised, Giovanni.
Very good. Good evening, Giovanni. Welcome, and we welcome your comment. You have 2 minutes, please.
You may speak now. We are
Giovanni?
unable to hear you. Let's see.
Lynette, is Giovanni on Zoom or on the phone?
He is on Zoom and his mic is on mute now, but we don't hear any sound.
And his hand is still raised?
Yes. Maybe we try later?
Yeah, I think that's fine. We will recognize that Giovanni tried to make a public comment, and if he's able to get back in, we'll pick that up in due course. So thank you. Are there any other hands raised for public comment?
There are none at the moment.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We'll move to agenda item 6, approval of minutes. We have approval of 3 sets of minutes, and we'll take these in turn with approval, with comments and approval separately. So we'll start with A, approval of the June 7th, 2023 Planning and Transportation Commission meeting minutes. Any comments from colleagues? Very good. Then motion.
Yes, I move that we approve the June 7th, 2023 Planning and Transportation Commission meeting minutes.
Thank you. A second? I'll second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Abstain.
Commissioner Roof?
Abstain.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
And Chair Iacoponi.
Yes. Very good, thank you. Our next set of minutes is for our June 19 meeting, June 19th, 2023, Planning and Transportation Commission meeting minutes. Comments? Motion to approve?
Sure. I move approval of the June 19th, 2023 Planning and Transportation Commission meeting minutes.
Thank you.
I second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Abstain.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
And Chair Iacoponi.
Yes. Thank you. And the third set of minutes here for this evening's approval are from the meeting of June 26, 2023. Any comments, corrections from colleagues?
If I could just note for the record, Chair, that I'm conflicted out of the item heard on June 26, so I will be abstaining.
Thank you. Others? A motion?
I make a motion to for approval of the June 26, 2023 Planning and Transportation Commission special meeting minutes.
Thank you.
I second the motion.
Very good. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Abstain.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Yes. Very good. Thank you. Let's move to item 7 on our agenda. Seems like we did this just a year ago. So that is the appointment of officers. We have 4 officer positions to elect this evening: Planning Commission Chair, Planning Commission Vice Chair, Primary RDRC Chair, and Alternate RDRC Chair. That is Residential Design Review Committee Chair for the record. Let's start with Commission Chair. And are there comments or folks who would like to put their hands up to be considered, or does anyone have someone that they would like to put forward? Commissioner Roof.
I wanted to start off by acknowledging our current chair, Iacoponi, on doing an especially excellent job, and so that's been much appreciated to have smooth running meetings and facilitating input from commissioners and from the public in a really good way. I think over the time that I've been on the Planning Commission, we've increasingly upped our game there, and you brought it to a new high level. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I would like to echo those comments. We had a really full agenda, a lot of complicated issues this year, and Chair Iacoponi, you did an excellent job. We had a lot of public commenters, really challenging agenda items, and I appreciate that you led the commission through all of those meetings. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
If I may, I'd like to chime in and laud our current commission chair, and I would like to nominate him for the next session to be Planning Commission Chair for the next fiscal year, or I guess this existing fiscal.
I would be willing to do that if others would be in support. So is that a nomination, and is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, very good. Let's take a roll call.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Yes. Well, again, to colleagues, thank you very much. It's been a very good year. I agree. We've tackled things well, and I trust the public also feels like collectively we've heard their input, considered the input, and referred items with due consideration to City Council or made our own judgment. And so thanks to all of you for working well together. Great, thank you. That would move us to Vice Chair. Commissioner Garvey.
I would like to ask and put into nomination our current Vice Chair, Kristen Clements, and ask if you would be willing to accept a nomination to again serve as our Vice Chair for one more year.
Thank you. I'd be happy to accept the nomination.
Commissioner Castaneda.
I'll second that nomination.
Very good. I think we have a nomination and a second, so let's take a roll call.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Absolutely.
Thank you to my colleagues. That's an unexpected pleasure. I appreciate your support.
Well, great. Let's now think about the RDRC chair. We have a process that I think will continue for a period of time. I'm not sure exactly when the current process will phase out. I suppose when City Council approves the odds, we'll have a different process. Is that correct?
So the odds is scheduled to go to council on September 11th. And so if it were adopted if it were introduced that evening, and the council chose to phase out the RDRC, then that would occur towards the end of October. However, there is a possibility that that recommendation might not be accepted. So we don't know at this point whether the RDRC will phase out. We know that was recommended with the robust outreach, but it has not been decided yet.
Okay, very good. So I think whoever might raise their hand for this, there's a possibility it'll be short, and there's a possibility it might not be as short. Commissioners, your thoughts? Commissioner Garvey, you're incumbent, and you've done this a lot. So.
Thank you. I'll say a few comments, and then maybe Commissioner Roof might want to chime in, who's also been involved with the committee this year. I've enjoyed chairing the committee. I am happy to have someone else chair it, but recognizing that it may only be around for several more months, I'm happy to chair it until it winds down. But I do want to ask Vice Chair Roof, if you had an interest in chairing it, I would certainly defer to you. I know that it's difficult when you work to make a 4 p.m. commitment, and I recognize that. And so being retired, it's a little bit easier for me. So let me just throw it out there for discussion as to what Commissioner Roof and others might be interested in.
Yeah, it was my pleasure to work with Commissioner Garvey on the RDRC, and I think I stepped in on 3 or so meetings, and that was interesting, and it felt like I was learning a lot and helping in the community there. But given the likely fairly short term getting up to speed, Commissioner Garvey's in full swing and expert, I would endorse her continuing in that role. I'm able to commit to being the alternate. I can deal with the schedule if the rest of the commissioners want, although if somebody else was hoping to kind of get to step into that role for a while, I'd be happy to let somebody else take a pass at that, because it is quite interesting, a different perspective on development in our community.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Roof. I would also support Commissioner Garvey's continuation. I think it makes sense. She brings a wealth of experience there, and has therefore a good track record of thinking through the issues that come up, and we appreciate her service. So I would support that as well.
I'd like to make a motion, and then if we have any other comments on this, that Commissioner Garvey would chair the Residential Design Review Committee for this fiscal year.
I would second. A roll call, please.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Yes. Very good.
One.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Garvey. And then we do have the need for an alternate. I would come back to Commissioner Castaneda. If you have a desire to try your hand at it, and should your name get called, pitch in. Love to hear your comments. And in the absence of that, I think Commissioner Roof is happy to continue. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm happy to have Commissioner Root continue.
Okay, very good. And I would support that as well. So I think we'll do roll call.
Through the chair, sorry, did we have a motion and second for?
Sorry, let's have a, I will move that Commissioner Roof continue as the alternate RDRC committee chair.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Yes. Congratulations. Thank you, everyone. Before we move to public hearing, if we could just check back as to whether the public comment requester, Giovanni, has raised his hand or come back on. Lynette, do you see anything?
Yes, his hand is raised again, and let's try.
Okay, let's try. Good evening, Giovanni. Can you hear us? Okay, I think we've made 2 attempts here, and if there's some comment, you can please send it on into city staff, and it will be noted. Thank you.
There's another hand raised
You're very
for
good.
public comment.
Very
Yeah,
good.
for public-
Thank you, Lynette. Go ahead.
Debbie and Gary Boldaki.
Good evening, Debbie or Gary. Are you raising your hand for public comment or for the next item or both?
For public comment, and it's just Debbie tonight.
Hello,
for an item
Debbie.
On the agenda.
Very good. For public comment then, you have 2
Yes.
minutes.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you very much for your service on the Planning Commission and taking on the new positions that you've taken or continuing them. I know it can seem like a really thankless job when people, have differences of opinion on the things that they want you to do. But we wanted to say thank you because it really requires a lot of hours. And we particularly appreciate staff, Lisa Costa Sanders, Lisa Porras, and other staff members for their work. But we do appreciate you too, even though that might not always come across in some of the projects. And one of the things you said that struck home with us is you said that, you hope that your tenure on the Planning Commission has resulted in people in the public feeling like they've been heard. And we ask you to think about that going forward, because sometimes the perception is that the developers or the applicants are given every single item they request, no matter what the public comment is. Some of this may stem from the fact that it's not really clear what mitigated negative declarations and environmental impact reports are designed to do. And so it doesn't make sense sometimes that a environmental impact report won't be required for a project such as Quarry Road, but will be required for a project such as a much lower environmental impact as a hotel. So if it would be possible, will you consider having a presentation explaining those differences so that the public knows when do you choose a mitigated negative declaration over an EIR and who makes that determination? That would be very helpful. And thank you again for your service. We appreciate you.
Well, thank you for your comments, Debbie. And I also appreciate the question that you posed, and sometimes I have to think about it myself when I'm looking at the materials. So maybe for the record and for staff, at some point, just clarifying the role of an EIR, a draft EIR, and then what is its role in the decision process and approval process would be useful for everybody.
Yeah, and we can certainly cover that in this evening's
Great,
meeting.
that would be really
Thank
helpful.
you. Yes.
Thank you. Let's just check, Lynette. Any other hands raised?
There are none at the moment.
Okay,
Oh, Giovanni raised his hand again. Should we give one last try?
sure. Hello, Giovanni, can you hear us?
You guys hear me?
Ah, there you are. Yes? If you
Sorry for
can,
the lack of technology. I couldn't get in from my computer, so I called in. How are you tonight? Thank you, first of all of you, for your hard work. Really appreciate being a business owner in San Carlos.
well, you're welcome, and we'll look forward to your comments, and you have 2 minutes, please.
My questions were about the Quarry Road project as well. Environmental impact report, proper notification to neighbors. I saw a post last week on LinkedIn saying great public partnership with a developer for a wonderful project that's going to push out generations of family-owned business in San Carlos, plus create a traffic logjam that's been already 20 years in the making. What's the next steps with that project? Is it a done deal, or it's going to go through more review from your committees?
Maybe staff, would you like to comment on Giovanni's question?
Certainly. So the 642 Quarry Road project was recommended by the Planning and Transportation Commission, and the City Council did vote to introduce the ordinance at their meeting last Monday. At their next meeting, which is August 28th, thank you, that would be the second reading of the ordinance that typically stays on consent. So essentially, the project's been approved, but the ordinance needs to be read again, and then it would be effective 30 days after that.
Understood. And is there an opportunity for further public comment, or is that closed?
No, somebody can certainly make a comment at the next City Council meeting, and certainly reach out to myself, and I'd be happy to provide any additional information on the project.
Very good. So Giovanni, as you've heard Lisa Costa-Sanders offer, you can reach out to her directly and have a dialogue with her about the project, and you can certainly join the next City Council meeting when the second reading of this ordinance has been raised and is on the agenda. Okay?
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
Yep, you're welcome. Okay, very good. Let's move to item 8. Can you go back one? Thank you. So we're now in the public hearing. The procedure for public hearing is that staff will present a report on the history, physical features, et cetera, on the application, followed with staff's recommendations. The applicant will make a presentation. Thereafter, interested members of the community may speak on the proposal. When all is interested, parties have had the opportunity to be heard, the hearing will be closed and no further discussion from the floor can be held. The commission will then consider the evidence and make its recommendation. If you challenge a public hearing item in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing described in this notice, the public notice, or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. Speakers should fill out a speaker's form found by the door and handed to the recording secretary prior to addressing the commission. And I don't think we have anyone here this evening. So we'll have the opportunity for the presentation by staff, by the applicant, and then comments from the public. This evening's agenda item is the 501 Industrial Road Hotel project. And it is the draft environmental impact report and a public comment hearing. And maybe, Lisa, since you volunteered, could you, I think in our packet, it was described as this is an opportunity to talk about the completeness of the items considered by the report, not the findings of the report itself.
That's right. We can describe that a bit further, too.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. As indicated, the item before you is the hearing on the draft EIR for the 501 Industrial Road Hotel project. If you can advance the slide, Chris. Thank you. So I'm just going to take care of introductions and a little bit of the purpose of the meeting. Lisa Costa-Sanders, Principal Planner. Christopher DeCumas, Senior Planner, Consulting Planner, will give an overview of the project. And then we have Steve Nowak. He's a principal with PlaceWorks, and he'll discuss the environmental impact report. And per the public comment at the meeting, he can also dive a little bit further into what's the difference between a mitigated negative declaration and EIR. Why do you choose to prepare which one over the other? So he's the expert, and he can discuss that for you. And then the applicant is here this evening, and he would like to give a brief presentation as well. And then we're happy to open it up for questions and receive comments. So I know the commission is familiar. You've reviewed draft EIRs previously. This hearing is really to receive comments. And so the document's been published. It's available for public review and comment. We like to do that in as many forms as possible. This hearing is not required under the California Environmental Quality Act. It's an optional hearing that we'd like to have. So people can give us written comments. They can comment at tonight's meeting, and feel free to ask questions as well. We're probably not going to respond to those comments tonight, though. The purpose of this hearing is to receive those. We're going to document all the comments, and then they're all responded to in what's called a response to comment document. And then if there's any changes or technical corrections that need to be made, that's handled as well. And I know Steve will mention this again later in the presentation. So no decisions are going to be made tonight on the project or the merits of it, purely if the environmental impact report is complete. Is there sufficient information in that document for you to be able to make a decision? And that's kind of your guiding light. So with that introduction, I'll hand it off to Christopher. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for having me this evening to introduce the 501 Industrial Road project, which is located at the southeast corner of Holly Street and Industrial Road. The site is currently vacant. This is an image of the site plan. There's one point of ingress and egress above the Game Prep Baseball Academy going northbound on Industrial Road. Left turns out of the site would be prohibited, while left turns into the site off of Industrial Road going southbound would be allowed. Additional access is provided going northbound on Industrial Road, turning right into the site. Additionally, the project would also include future improvements at the Industrial Road and Holly Street intersection. So tonight, the applicant is requesting the environmental impact report, plan development zoning, and plan development plan, development agreement, design review, conditional use permit, and transportation demand management plan to allow reduced parking. The Planning and Transportation Commission and City Council review is required. So the hotel consists of two sections, one 6-story section, which primarily can be seen from Holly Street, and then a 3-story structure off of Industrial Road. In total, 136,000 gross square feet of constructed area and approximately 119,000 square feet of gross floor area and size. The boutique hotel consists of 188 rooms, includes a lobby, dining area, and meeting spaces. They're also seeking to rezone the site from landmark commercial to planned development. And due to the site's proximity to the San Carlos Airport, the proposed building height, they do require FAA approval, which was received by the applicant on July 10th this year. And in terms of the planned development zoning, this would allow parking from parking from the street-facing property line, distance of short-term parking from the building entrance, increase allowable signage square footage, and also the location of signage on the roof. This next slide shows the building from Industrial Road, where in the foreground you see the 3-foot structure, which is also inclusive of the planted trees to help disguise some of that structure. And then the 6-story structure you can see in the foreground from Industrial Road. Coming off of Holly Street, that overpass, looking southeast in the site is the second image, which shows the 6-story structure. The project also includes a courtyard located at the center of the project site to provide outdoor space and amenities for informal gatherings for guests to the site, whether they be residents or staying at the hotel. The landscape element is part of the general plan requirements. So the site itself is identified as a gateway into the city. So the applicant is working a landscape element into the site, which is at the northwestern corner of the project site. In total, approximately 11,400 square feet of landscaped area would be included, which includes biofiltration, planters, shrubs, ground cover, and non-irrigated landscaping. In terms of access and circulation, 148 parking stalls, which is a 22% reduction that would be through the implementation of the TDM plan. In addition, the project's providing 20 short-term bicycle parking spaces and 12 long-term bicycle parking spaces. And as previously noted, left turns out of the site would be prohibited, while left turns into the site would be permitted. And with that, I'll turn it over to Steve Nowak of PlaceWorks to discuss the CEQA review process. Thank you.
Good evening. I'll start just with an overview of the California Environmental Quality Act. CEQA is the state's primary environmental protection law. It requires that public agencies disclose potential environmental impacts of projects that have the potential for a physical effect on the environment. So that really is very broad in terms of looking at a range of projects that have that potential. CEQA does not approve or deny a project. It does not dictate denial or approval. It's a disclosure document that's intended to notify decision makers and the public if there is a potential for an environmental effect, whether or not that effect can be fully mitigated to a less than significant level. That's a term of art. If a mitigation measure is only partially successful and you have a significant and unavoidable impact, that really just means that the impact can't be fully mitigated, but the decision-making body determines that based on other factors such as economic factors or social issues, the benefit of the project outweighs that impact, and that's a disclosure process that happens during the certification of an EIR. Let's see. So in general, with when we're looking at an EIR, there are many areas, many possibilities for public input during the process. That is a difference from a negative declaration where there is less room for public input. In an EIR, we send a notice of preparation that states that the city is intending to look at this project, to prepare an EIR, to look at the following topics. We ask the public to comment on those topics. And if there are specific issues that somebody might be aware of by living near the site or just general familiarity with the project, it's the opportunity to ensure that that is covered by commenting during the public scoping meeting, public notice of preparation and scoping meeting. Then we prepare the EIR, and then we release it for a 45-day public review period. That's another difference with a negative declaration. The negative declaration is essentially finished. It's not a draft, it's the document, and it's released for a 30-day public review period, and then goes right to the decision-making body for approval. Comments, the decision-making body is not required by law to respond to comments on a negative declaration. Most agencies do out of courtesy to the people who have provided the comment, but it's not necessarily a requirement. And I know I'm kind of going back and forth, but I'll finish on the negative declaration side. Really, that's intended for projects where it can be demonstrated through substantial evidence. There's no evidence of an impact, of an environmental impact. And when we look at the 21 different categories in the environmental checklist, that's done preliminarily at the time a project comes in to determine which type of environmental review is the most appropriate. For a project negative declaration, really, it's if there are potential impacts and you really focus on working with the developer, the applicant, to make modifications to the project to avoid those impacts, or you can apply mitigation measures, and if you can demonstrate that it reduces the impact to a less than significant level. But basically, the finding must be made there are no impacts associated with approval of this project based on that negative declaration. The one issue of using a negative declaration is called the fair argument standard. And if any member of the public or anybody else during the process provides evidence of a potential impact, that means the negative declaration process has to stop, and then you have to start an EIR process. So it's kind of a calculated evaluation. If a project seems pretty straightforward, all the impacts are fully mitigated either by conditions of approval, by other regulatory environment, or there's no potential for impacts, then we would move forward with a negative declaration. In the case of the hotel, we did have issues with hazardous materials where it was not really certain if those could be fully remediated at the time we started the project. We also had a sensitive single-family neighborhood across the street. And so the EIR process gives everybody a chance, as I say, to participate more in the process, to do a little bit deeper of an evaluation. And then it does then, ends up with mitigation measures where there are key issues that can be mitigated. So I hope that clarifies. Sometimes it is a political call. Sometimes it's really based on the nature of the project itself. There are many different factors that go in, but in this case, the determination to do an EIR for what seemed like a pretty straightforward project is really based on the conditions in the area, the single-family neighborhood directly west, and the fact that there was hazardous materials and ongoing investigation at that time. So I hope that answers that question. Now we can finish up here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So once the 45-day public review period is finished, we will collect the comments that we received tonight, comments that are received during the 45 days, and it will prepare the final EIR, which will provide a response to all of those comments. Could require changing portions of the EIR if we receive factual evidence of some need to refine a decision or some other thing, but the final EIR then would be what's certified. And that's another interesting fact. The lead agency certifies an EIR as correct, whereas they approve an initial study mitigated negative declaration. So by certifying, it means that the public agency certifies that all the information is correct and the decisions in that EIR are accurate and reflect the project. So I think I've pretty much talked about an EIR. As I mentioned, it does not, an EIR does not approve or deny a project. It discloses information. It identifies mitigation measures to avoid or reduce impacts. It also looks at feasible alternatives. If you have a project where there are numerous impacts and you really want to look at an alternative to reduce those or get rid of them altogether. The alternatives also then describe the superior alternative that does not compel a decision-making body to automatically adopt that alternative. You can still look at the project itself, what the comparisons are to the environmentally superior alternative. Decision makers can deny or modify a project even if no impacts are found based on other issues outside of environmental issues. Those would be the merits of the project and other levels of socioeconomic impacts and other considerations. And then, as I noted, the EIR itself is certified by the lead agency before there's any decision on the project itself. So during the scoping period for this project, we did receive comments on hazardous materials, hydrology and water quality, and transportation. Those are the key themes of the comments we received. All of the comments received are appended in the draft EIR. The EIR itself addressed a wide variety of environmental issues, not all of them, but a wide variety of them. When we published the notice of preparation, we did include a checklist, and we demonstrated at that time why certain topics there'd be no chance of impact. So we dismissed some of the 21 topics during that early scoping process. The ones that were carried forward are listed here, and then the ones where there's an asterisk are ones where there was mitigation applied, and based on that mitigation, it reduced potential impacts to less than significant levels. And those, I won't go through each one of them, but this is a list of the impacts and mitigation measures affecting air quality and cultural resources, geology and soils, Noise was, we looked closely at noise. We found a potential impact with the neighboring hotel, but because that hotel was built very recently and the building standards are so good that we would reduce the construction noise on interior to less than significant levels. And then the other areas that required mitigation included the transportation section and the tribal cultural resources, which is pretty standard for potential discovery of artifacts or bones during construction. The alternatives, we looked at 2 alternatives. One is the CEQA required no project alternative, which compares the impacts of the project to the site. It still looks at the potential for development of another project, or it can look at that, but in this case, there's nothing else proposed, so it really just looked at existing conditions compared to construction of the project. The lower intensity alternative, we looked at a 4-story hotel at a maximum of 50 feet with 120 rooms. The site plan itself would remain unchanged. And the purpose of this alternative was really to look at ways to reduce noise impacts by adjusting the height of the building, leading to shorter construction activities. So that covers what was the topics in the EIR. And now I believe the applicant will make a presentation.
Thank you, Steve.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Isi Liu, and I'm with Holly Hotel Group, which owns the subject property. Michael Zen is also in the audience. He's a partner on the project. His family has owned the site for about 25 years now. They used to operate Bayshore Supplies on it, and they moved about several years ago to Britton Avenue. And we struck a deal with him to build a hotel here. And our view is that basically we want to do not a cookie cutter hotel, but a boutique hotel. And really on the peninsula, there's no other boutique hotel. One would have to drive 10 miles south to Palo Alto and probably 20 miles north to San Francisco before you hit another boutique hotel. And basically, with a boutique hotel design, we would create another center of gravity in East San Carlos, which would attract all of the new biotech office building workers coming online along Industrial Road, as well as existing residents in East San Carlos, so that we could reduce, hopefully, especially east-west vehicular traffic, and have people perhaps walk to our hotel for a lunch or a conference. So we chose the brand called Hotel Indigo under IHG, the world's second largest hotel operator after Marriott. We also chose HBA Hirsch-Bedner, based out of Santa Monica. They have offices in London, Hong Kong, and Bangkok. They're one of the premier international hotel design companies. With Hotel Indigo, the owner always has to come up with a theme for the hotel, which is specific to that location, the culture, the history. And so we came up with, obviously, State of Good Living for San Carlos, technology roots, and dreamers and doers. And we picked up on the fact that, basically, for 100 years, San Carlos has been the home of many inventors, such as Heliar, who invented the Heliocopter. People do vacuum tubes, which helped expand radar during World War II, as well as many other inventions. So that really informed how we then designed this hotel. Again, really local design, we're going to source local restaurateurs and also food and beverage purveyors. We will also have about 4,000 square feet of rentable meeting space, which will be available gratis to local nonprofits. So, and I just want to highlight, this is the ground floor. When you walk in, you really are hit with, basically not a traditional lobby, but, a pleasant restaurant, about 2,000 square feet of sitting space. You'll see the boardroom is about 800 square feet on the ground floor. Again, that would be available gratis for nonprofits when it's not being rented out. We also have a very large courtyard, which extends out the seating area of the restaurant. Again, some images of the design. These are all individually designed furniture, which we will actually manufacture. And it will only be used for this hotel and no other hotel in the world. Some restaurant images, the boardroom, and then the other amenity on the second floor is the approximately 3,000 square feet of conference space. And again, that will be available for free for local nonprofits as well. And then we have pre-function spaces. Some images of the interior design and furniture. And again, the typical guest room, these furniture will also be specifically designed for this hotel. I wanted to add just a summary of our community engagement to date. We did have, in February of 2022, a formal Zoom meeting with Greater East San Carlos Neighborhood Committee. We've been actively engaged with them in the past 2 years. Anytime there was a major milestone or we received major approvals from government agencies such as the FAA or the Regional Water Board, which we did and we shared. Even this morning, I've been going back and forth with GESC on some of the issues that came up during the draft GIR. And with that, I hope my consultant, Kenya Alfaro from RWise Architect, is on Zoom. Kenya, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, go ahead, Kenya.
Okay, so as previously mentioned, the proposed hotel sits on a landmark and gateway parcel along Holly and Industrial. We needed to welcome the community into the city of San Carlos and provide a statement. Next slide, please. The overall shape of the building embraces the shape of the parcel while providing all the required spaces and guest rooms needed for a viable hotel project. We've broken up the massing into 2 wings, as mentioned earlier. The wing along Industrial is stepped down in response to community feedback and provide more privacy to the neighbors across Industrial Road. So you can see the lower portion on the first image. That's the industrial wing. And the 6-story portion is facing 101. Next slide. The main 6-story wing sits above parking to maximize parking on the site. Along the ground floor and faces 101 while wrapping around the central courtyard. Next slide. The first floor is dedicated to welcoming public space with transparency through to the courtyard. And once you're in the courtyard, there is a connection to the meeting spaces on the second floor. Next slide, you see. So there's meeting spaces overlooking the courtyard. There's a great connection there with the exterior stair and circulation through the elevators as well. Next slide. And here you can see the massing of the building at the step down of the Industrial Road wing and as it relates to the residences. So the trees are acting as a shield and is not as imposing as the 6-story wing, which is facing 101 and enjoying some of the bay views. Next, our landscape architect, Tom Holloway, with KLA, will discuss the landscaping throughout the site.
Hi, everybody. How you doing? I hope EC, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, thanks, Tom.
Okay,
Yes,
awesome.
thank you.
All right, I think, one of the main things that we were looking at with this project is utilizing the landscape to really kind of create the bridge between the existing long-standing land uses that surround the project, the gateway specific plan, and then also some of the new development that's happened to the south. This project, as we saw on the slide before, sits in a very prominent location at Holly Industrial and Highway 101. So it's really an important, important gateway, an important piece of the pie for the whole specific plan area. One of the things that we look at with this slide is really you're kind of seeing two different faces of the hotel. One on the upper level is the 6-story piece that we've talked about, which really is directed towards Highway 101 and Holly and the Holly overpass, which is a much larger and just in the kind of the scheme of things, it's just a much more macro level space. Whereas the industrial road component, which we see off to the left, I mean, right on this one and then down below, is a little more intimate in terms of how the relationship is between cars, people, and then of course guests of the hotel. The industrial road frontage, we're really trying to achieve a couple of goals here. One is to create a nice welcoming environment for the hotel guests. So we want to create a buffer and a separation between the busyness of industrial road and the entry into the hotel. But the second, and probably even more important, is to make sure that the hotel is fitting in the context of the community. So that evergreen hedge that we've got along the sidewalk and the frontage, as well as the row of trees, is both scaling the building in relationship to the road, but it's also providing buffer to the road and, more importantly, the residences to the west, which of course is a very important aspect of this project. We're proposing large screen trees along that edge. We're working with city staff and with the residents group to come up with the specific species that we'll want for that. We want everyone to be happy with it, and we understand that there was some not happiness necessarily with some of the trees that were planted to the south. So we're working closely with staff and the residents group on that. I think EC, if we can go to the next slide. One of the other items, of course, and this to the right and the lower slide show that relationship to industrial as well. We also use landscape throughout the site, which you see in the upper left photo a little bit more, to incorporate through the parking lot and really make sure that we're creating a kind of an oasis around here with the streets that surround. Next slide. These are photo simulations of, we took photographs around the site and then we digitally placed the building in it. Upper left, of course, you see what you would see coming off of the Highway 101 off-ramp, the intersection of Industrial and Holly, and that's where you see that larger form of the building that really kind of fits the scale of that environment. But on the right side and the lower right, even more importantly, is how it fits within the context of industrial. And you can see that it, especially the image on the upper right, that it really fits in with the building massing that's already there, the way that the building is stepped back, the 6-story piece being pushed further onto the 101 frontage, so it's not very dominant on the industrial. As we incorporate the landscape into it, you really get a nice kind of crescendo the way the building works its way up from industrial. And then really the important photo is the one on the lower right, where we've got a picture from the residential to the west looking straight east at where the hotel is. And it really is not a dominant structure in relationship to that. That 3-story element in the landscape really helps to buffer that. Next slide, please, EC. So then Kenya touched on earlier the central core. This is the very center of the site. Just such a key element to this project, creating an oasis for the hotel guests. And it's the way that the building is built around it. 2, 3, I guess you'd really say 3 sides of it are protected by the building. And then this courtyard space offers an extension of the lobby space, dining, meeting room space comes out into that. Center has a multi-function for special events to be able to extend large groups of people. But then we've incorporated a lot of landscape and a lot of additional amenities for guests at a smaller, more intimate level, with some seating areas mixed within the landscape. There's a strong separation between the parking lot and this courtyard space, so you really do feel secluded within it. If we can go to the next slide, there are some photos or some generated images of what that space is going to look like. Again, a lot of opportunity for guest amenities, and really taking all the landscape spaces that we've got and utilizing them to the greatest extent possible, to the point where along the edge of the courtyard space, which you can see in the lower right corner photo, we're doing vertical landscape to be able to screen that under building parking, but lift the landscape so it makes it that much more dramatic. The next slide, please. Just some more images of how full and dense that is. Again, the image at the lower right, I don't know why you keep coming to those ones, but that's that separation of the parking lot between the parking and the courtyard, and how full the landscape is. And I want to point out, even before we get to the next slide, that the integration of the stormwater treatment within the landscape spaces was something that we started right off the bat. So all of our stormwater is taken care of, the state requirements for treatment of the stormwater, and you don't even really recognize that it's all happening in the landscape spaces the way everything is combined together. So that as we go to the next slide, when we look at the civil engineer's plan and these green areas that you see, those aren't just the landscape spaces. Those are the stormwater treatment spaces that are in the landscape spaces. So that is all integrated together, and all of our stormwater is treated on site through those bio treatment areas. And then we were also requested to make sure that we're storing enough water. So the red lines that are running through there of course is stormwater storage within the treatment spaces, but then we've got additional stormwater storage within 42-inch pipes that are under the parking lot where those red lines are. And then finally, I just want to point out that the building is set 3 feet above flood stage, so it's at the elevation 13. So we've met those requirements. We still meet all the ADA. The civil engineer is with us tonight as well, I understand. So if we get into technical questions, we can definitely speak to that. And I'm sorry it went so long, but EC, back to you.
Thanks, Tom. By the way, Tom used to be a city planning commissioner in another California city. Not to be named tonight, but anyway, so Kenya, do you have?
Yeah, so parking reduction, and I think Chris touched on this a little bit. We are requesting a 22% reduction, and in order to do that, we've prepared a transportation demand management plan. And these are a few of the strategies that we are proposing and hope to implement. We have the full TDM with the city if anyone needs to see that. Another big concern was site access. As noted earlier, there is just one point of entrance and egress from the site. And we explored different options and just limited to our site. This is our best proposal. We will be following the recommendation from W-Trans and adding a left turn into the site, and there will be a right turn only out of the site. And we will be training staff to remind guests that it is only right turn out of the site. Next slide. Another site access concern came from the fire department due to site constraints, as mentioned. A single point access point code requires 2, but we did receive a conditional AMMR approval for single means for fire department access by providing an electrically driven fire pump for automatic standpipes throughout the site. We also received a determination letter from the Regional Water Board stating that they would take the lead on the application review. They also determined that the cleanup case will not be reopened and that they would not require a vapor intrusion mitigation system given the low vapor intrusion threat. In addition to coordinating with the fire department and WRQBC, we have received a no hazard to air navigation letter from the FAA. And finally, we have an enclosure and new development approval from Ecology for our trash enclosure. Thank you for your time and allowing us to present. we look forward to continuing working with the community.
Thanks, Kenya. Also, our environmental engineers are online in case you have any questions, as well as our transportation consultant, Hexagon. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Yeah, please, Lisa.
If I can just close it out.
Go
Thank
ahead.
you. So as we indicated, there is a 45-day public review and comment period. The draft EIR is available on the city's website. We also are happy to make copies for anybody that has any difficulty accessing it from the website. And the close of the public comment would be Monday, September 25th before 5 p.m. So you can mail a comment in or you can email it to myself. Is there one more? Thank you. And then the comments this evening should focus on the content, the analysis, and the conclusions of the draft EIR. And as indicated, they will be included in the draft EIR with responses. And then following the close of the public comment period and preparation of response to comments, then we'll schedule a formal hearing before the Planning and Transportation Commission to consider recommending the EIR to City Council as well as all the other entitlements. And that concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So a lot of content there, and I know the request is that tonight we focus on the EIR, the draft EIR, and whether or not the information, the topics were sufficiently covered in the document. But let's start with commissioners. Maybe we'll take sort of one question around and we can loop a couple of times if we need to for clarifying either of staff or the applicant. So Commissioner Garvey.
Thank you, Chair. Excellent presentation all around. I really appreciated that, all of that information. My question maybe for Kenya, the alternative measures and methods request that has been conditionally approved, I wanted to know who the approving agency is, and the condition, as I understood it from your presentation, was that electric-driven fire pumps for standpipes would be used. Can you tell me what that is? I'm not familiar with what that phrase means, and I just wanted to make sure I understood it. Thank you.
So that provides allows for the fire department to connect various points throughout the site. So that's the standpipes. That way they don't, that way if for whatever reason, the fire truck can't get into the site, they can take the hoses to the various points and connect that way.
I understand. So they're like a fire hydrant, or you can connect a hose to these standpipes and get water for a fire. Now I understand it.
Yeah, if I could also add more. So the fire engine or fire trunk, depending on what's responding, actually acts as the pumper and connects to the fire hydrant, to the engine, then it pumps the water in to fight the fire. So what this standpipe is doing is it's electronically driven, so it does that pumping action if the engine or truck cannot access the site.
So if we lose power in a fire, the electric-driven standpipes can still work because there's a backup generator that's going to be on site that will power that. I now more fully understand that. No, thank you.
Great, thank you. Vice Chair Clements.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question about the noise analysis. I understand in the presentation that noise, as received by the nearby residents was mitigated because of the high quality of the noise reduction windows. And I wondered, I was looking in the noise analysis and the summary of it, and just wanted to see if we could get a comment on noise for the nearby single-family neighborhood.
Are you referring to the level of noise at the single family or the conclusions for the single family neighborhood?
Yes, the conclusions as to level of noise or any other measure. Yes.
Yeah, the main noise impacts were associated with the construction period. And the main impact was to the hotel, the adjacent hotel, because of its proximity to this site. The overall the noise impacts were less than significant for the neighborhood across the street. However, given the fact that it's a single-family neighborhood, there's still much of the mitigation is still focused on working with that neighborhood as well in terms of letting people know during noisy events and other things, providing ways for people to ask questions, or if they are, complaining, to address those complaints. But the actual threshold itself was found to be less than significant.
Thank you. And I just a quick follow-on. Does the noise during construction get analyzed differently than ongoing operations noise?
Yes, because it's a different nature. It ebbs and flows depending on the construction, the specific construction activity at that time. Whereas the operational noise, assumes, it looks at traffic, it looks at this project's contribution to traffic, whether or not that would raise the noise to a level that's above a threshold. But it really then is just looking at the day-to-day operation, focusing, I guess, on the more active traffic portions of the day.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Castaneda.
I have a question about water and possible flooding. I see lots of provisions for runoff control. I did see that. But I also noticed it said that it was unknown if a flood elevation certificate would be needed. And who decides that? When will that be decided? And what is the first floor? Is there any elevation to the first floor?
I'm not sure about the question on the determination on, I'd have to go back and look at the section kind of to refresh myself, but it's really the Public Works Department that has really looked at this closely and been making the determinations on the suitability of the project and the changes that were needed to include more water retention on site and to raise the site to outside of above the floodplain. The first floor activities typically would not include any like overnight accommodations or anything like that. That's typically how it's designed. So.
And I can expand on that a bit. So as indicated, there was a lot of very detailed review conducted by our Public Works Department to really look at that flood and to make sure also that when they raised the building pad above the flood zone, that then they weren't putting the water onto other properties and causing some unintended consequences. So that was analyzed as well as indicated, and to make sure that there's adequate retention on the site. And then the floodplain administrator is the building official.
Thank you. That's good. I do have one more question, or should I wait?
If we could, we'll come on back to you.
Okay.
All right, great, thank you. Commissioner Roof.
I appreciate the comments and clarifications from my colleagues, because those were some of the concerns I also had. I think that overall the content of the environmental impact report looks appropriate and follows best practices. I was particularly pleased to see the sound barrier concept implemented here. I haven't really seen too much of that, so that's nice that they're accommodating their neighbor. And the height, which may not fall under CEQA so much in some ways, but for the impact on the community, I was very happy to hear that the developers worked with the community and the design looks good that way. For the future discussions, I'm optimistic that that this will be successful. So I have no concerns.
Thank you, Commissioner Roof. Regarding the EIR, the one, I think the surprise that I had was that, and there was a great comment, was that the cleanup case will not be opened, given what I understand is the history of materials that have been used on the site. Could we just get a little more information as to what was found and why that's not an issue?
Yeah, I think we'll have the applicant. You indicated your environmental consultants available.
Yeah, hi, this is Frank Voss with PSI.
Thank you, Frank.
And yeah, so what it was is there was a former Shell gas station that was on the corner, and they ceased operation in the early 80s. There was an investigation done of soil and groundwater, and there was a determination that there was very little impact to soil and groundwater associated with that former gas station. And then the case was closed in 1992 with, like I said, really very low concentrations of total petroleum hydrocarbons in the soil and groundwater. Then back in 2022, we did a phase 1 environmental site assessment to identify that the gas station was there. So we did soil vapor testing to verify if those residual impacts would have a potential for vapor intrusion into the proposed structure. We again only found really low concentrations of VOCs associated with that former gas station. Took all the information, sent it to the Regional Water Quality Control Board, who then reviewed all the data and determined that no, we didn't need to reopen the case, that was closed, and that vapor mitigation barrier was not necessary for this property.
Very good, thank you. That answers my question. Let's go back, Commissioner Garvey.
Thank you, Chair. This question relates to the solar that's going on the roof. The EIR, I believe, said there's going to be solar on the roof, and any electrical needs that are not met by the solar on the roof are going to be met by Peninsula Clean Energy, which I think the EIR said was going to be fully renewable by 2025. I'm curious how much of the site's electrical needs will be met by the solar on the roof, and does the EIR evaluate at all the balance between how much of the electrical need is met by the solar and how much is met by the utility? Is there a requirement that the solar provide at least half of the electricity, or is it up to the applicant and the EIR simply evaluates what the applicant proposes? Can someone help me understand that?
Do you want to start with how much solar is on site? Can you maybe assist with that?
Are you online?
I am.
Yeah.
So we haven't fully designed the solar. We are hoping to meet Cal Green requirements. I don't have a percentage off the top of my head at the moment, but if you look at the design, the 6-story wing has an awning, and we're hoping to use that as a solar structure to hold up solar panels there. Hopefully we can use the full length. And obviously some of the roof structure as well will have room for additional solar panels. But at the moment, I think we have, we are going to meet Cal Green requirements.
Thank you, that's very helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a question about the fire access, and maybe this is a staff question. How common is it for the fire department to determine one point of entry is sufficient? And as I understand it, again, this offset was because of the electrically driven fire pumps. So is this a common determination, or is this unusual because the electrically driven fire pumps may be unusual? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the fire code, right, has requirements that the fire department be able to have access two sides of the building. And in this situation, the driveway around the site, I believe, does provide full fire access around the site. However, there's only one driveway serving it. Many properties that are between two other properties also only have one driveway accessing them. We do have some flag lots. This property is unique in that there's really no way you can access off the Holly Street, even though there's a separate roadway there. That is prohibited. So the fire department takes a look at each site and any unique characteristics of that site when they're considering whether or not to approve an alternate means and methods study or report or request. That's the R, request. And in this situation, they felt that the additional fire pump access served what would be lacking from that secondary access to the site.
Very helpful, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Clements. Commissioner Roof, anything that you'd like to follow up on?
No further from me.
Okay, very good. And Commissioner Castaneda?
No, nothing further.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to ask staff, they'll probably tell me these are off topic for the evening, but there is a request for a change in zoning that we're not going to consider tonight, but it has 4 benefits or changes. So I guess my ask is, can you make sure that we're really clear on, I'll call it, what are the gives and the gets when it comes time for viewing the project at that point on changing the zoning, like why bother?
Certainly, we can discuss that.
Thank you. And the only other one was, and Commissioner Roof raised this as well, and that's the height. And I don't have any like particular issue on the height, I don't think. However, it would seem to have an environmental impact on the neighborhood. I know it's now stepped back, and I thought I noticed a couple of the pictures, the CGI pictures, did not show that, I'll call it the 7th floor awning screen flyover structure, and some did. And I guess I would just want to make sure or ask the applicant, are they not shown? And let me be explicit to be a little more helpful here. You had flagged on.
Yeah, we can pull up. I think that elevation was shown.
Yeah, it was like,
and
it
we
was
can
the
talk
lower
about that.
right-hand corner of A16 specifically from the neighborhood. And thank you for pointing that out. It's just not up there. Is that because it won't be seen?
Correct. It's going to be hidden. It's actually only on the side of 101 and the ramp, the on-ramp onto South 101. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad to hear that. And I guess, if you're all representing that the images as shown and the absence of that upper structure are what the residents will see, then I'm going to take your word for it, and that will be how it is.
Well, Commissioner, you can see on the middle left perspective that the roof awning, which holds the solar panels, does not go all the way to Industrial Road. It actually starts a third of the way down along the 6-story building.
That's helpful,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
And maybe could you say, what's the purpose of that? Because that adds like a lot of height, right?
Well, one for, solar electric generation. It does add a bit of height, but again, it's along the highway. And we're very cognizant of that fact. We don't add additional height along, that's visible along.
Well, I'm aware that we're not, I'm probably overstepping what tonight's meeting is about, but thank you for sharing that perspective, and we'll await public comment at the right time if there's any other considerations, and I'll just say it's on my mind.
Okay.
Thank you. So let me just check one more time. Commissioners, other questions before we go to public comment? Yeah, Commissioner Garvey.
One last question. This is relating to the bioretention areas and stormwater storage. The draft EIR said that the project would not significantly alter the drainage pattern of the site, and there's biotension areas, there's flow-through planters. Is there a guide or a requirement for how much flow-through planters or bioretention areas a site has to have? I believe the landscape presenter said that all of the stormwater would be contained in these flow-through or treated. Can you just confirm that? Sure. I don't know how, I see the landscape plan. Mm-hmm. Could you have had more bioretention plans? Do we need more, or is the city comfortable with how much you've proposed and the EIR has evaluated that and it's sufficient?
Sure. I'll let Tom take a first crack at it. Tom, are you still on?
Yeah, I am. And yeah, there are the requirements associated with the stormwater mitigation, and the civil engineer, if they're on, can get into the more technical aspect of it. But basically, all projects are required to treat stormwater, and there are multiple different ways you can do it, from like a grassy swale where water starts at one end, goes through the grass, and as it's going through the grass, the particulates are filtered out of it. And then there's the much more intensive flow-through planters where there's a soil medium with plants in it. It actually retains water. Water flows into these, and then it perks through the soil medium and the plants and the roots, and either perks into the ground or, in most cases, is picked up by storm drain after it's been filtered and then either taken to on-site storage or pushed into the storm drain system for the community. The flow-through planters that I just described are much more intense and have a smaller footprint associated with them, and is the direction that we're using for this project. I think that covers it. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
But yes, it does treat everything, and we are meeting the requirements of the state and the city's requirements for stormwater treatment and storage.
That's very helpful. And just as a follow-up to that, are you storing any excess stormwater on site? And is that the 40-inch pipe that you were talking about underneath a parking structure? Can you help me understand that better?
Yeah, so in order to make sure that we are not putting too much pressure on the downstream storm drain system, we are required to hold a certain amount of water on site before it's released out. So that's what those large pipe reservoirs are for.
Right.
Okay, yes.
May I just add?
Correct me if I'm wrong, EC.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. We also looked at flash flooding situations, which we experienced last winter. And so basically, we did add in the 48-inch diameter pipes, 400 feet in length, so around 5,000 cubic feet of additional stormwater detention on site. And that's for flash flooding, 5-minute, 10-minute flash floods. Yeah.
And if there's no rain for a long time and there's a drought, can you use any of the water that's sitting around in these pipes for irrigation for your landscaping?
We're looking into that.
You're looking into that.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
that's great.
We hate to lose it. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be right. It would be nice if it didn't all slowly flow away, that you could use some of it. Yeah,
Exactly.
okay, thank you, very helpful. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Why don't we move to public comment? Lynette, do we have hands raised for public comment?
Yes, we do. We have Renee.
Very good, thank you. Welcome, Renee. Good evening. Can you hear us?
Hello, yes.
Very good, and you have 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. I live on Bayport Court, so this is of interest to me as a resident of the East Side. I just, largely, I actually think this looks quite nice, and I appreciate the setback from the neighborhood and the way it was designed. So, I mean, largely, I think it's great. I'm not part of that Greater East San Carlos group, and I guess I'd like to make the comment that I don't know how that group is formed, and possible that it's not always representative of everyone on the East Side. So just throwing that out there. But in any case, I agree with what it seems like they were saying, that the trees, I suspect they were suggesting that the trees in front of the Marriott next door were not very substantial. They're a little weak looking. And so I would encourage you to plant some substantial trees along the border that faces the neighborhood that are not wimpy or scraggly and actually provide a screen. And generally, more trees on the east side. I appreciate the tree program. I've planted trees on my lot. I wish others would do so. This is mostly a pro-tree comment. And that is all. Thank you all for your work.
Thank you very much, Renee, and appreciate your comments. Lynette, next person.
Next up is Debbie or Gary Bodaki.
Thank you, Lynette. Debbie, I think that's you, and if so, welcome back.
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. We submitted a public comment letter, and I won't go through that. because we did identify the areas that we hope that you will consider in the future, which is mainly adopting the alternative that's got the lower hotel impact. In response to concerns that were expressed tonight, first let me address the tree issue. We've met with people from various developments down there, and the water is brackish on that side of industrial. So a lot of times they plant trees and they die. So they have to be put in containers. So I think that the virtual representation showing very thick trees and then not showing the buildings at all give this community a false sense of what they can expect, because that water in that area doesn't really support trees. Number two, the most concerning thing was the left-hand turn allowed into the development. That's going to snarl traffic from 101 into Holly for hours if you allow that. There are thousands of life science workers that are going to be turning there, and they are not going to want to wait behind cars that are trying to make a left-hand turn. With regard to energy use and utility use, the water use in the CEQA document was based on a projection of residential use, not the intense use by life sciences. One development alone on 642 Quarry Road will use 27 million gallons a year. That service area is 11 million gallons storage. Other properties on this side of Holly are 150 million gallons a year. So having the scale of the property be lower will reduce their energy use and the water use. And I didn't see anything about the sound barrier that Commissioner Roof asked about. So if you could address that, I would appreciate it. And finally, on fire, if those electric pumps fail in a fire, the backup generators are diesel. How is that safe? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Debbie. And Lynette, do we have a next caller?
Yes, we have two more hands raised. Next one is letter F, last name Wood.
Very good. Mr. Wood, welcome. Can you hear us?
Good afternoon, or good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Fred Wood, and I live at 919 McHugh. And during the winter, it's called Lake McHugh. Very concerned about raising the property levels over there 3 feet, because that just means the water on the east or the west side of Industrial Road has no place to go. I'd also like to know what the impact on the sewage system would be. Adding 200 more rooms to an existing sewer system is not conducive for our area, because as of last year, we actually had sewage running into the storm drains. So I'd truly like to know whether that was going to be addressed. Blame a lot of that on the current hotel that sits across the street for adding their 200 rooms. And I wanted to know whether the Planning Commission is aware that the water table down here is actually probably around 6 to 8 feet. So how taking up this much room is going to affect when we do have those flash floods and water has no place to go, how that's going to affect our neighborhoods. And as for the solar panels, I'd ask that the Planning Commission would contact San Francisco Airport, because I'm under the impression that with the 70-mile-an-hour winds, they had several solar panels fly off into oncoming traffic. So that's very concerning to me as well. And that concludes everything I've got for you. I'd appreciate your concerns.
Thank you, Fred, and appreciate your comments this evening, and they've been noted here for tonight's meeting. And Lynette, I think you said we had a fourth hand raised.
Yes, we have Solomon.
Good evening, Solomon. Welcome. Can you hear us?
Yeah. Hi.
You have 2 minutes, please.
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I wanted to address the left turn lane across industrial, the left turn lane onto industrial, or sorry, from industrial onto the property. I think over there is like, there's a lot going on. on that side of industrial, there's people who are turning onto Holly and eventually onto 101. And my concern is that there's also a bike lane there, and it's completely unprotected. And I'm just concerned about the safety of both bikers, and also, you know, there's just a lot of traffic there of all the modes, and I'm concerned that the allowing that left turn from industrial onto the property is going to just be a mess. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. And Lynette, have we other hands raised?
We don't have any more.
Okay, going once, twice. I'll entertain a motion to close public comment.
I'll move that we close the public comment period.
Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Yes. Thank you all. Maybe just for staff, from this point, we don't have any motions or anything to vote on this evening on this topic. That's correct?
That's correct.
Okay, good. Maybe just after the public comment and any other time reflecting from the presentations, do any of my colleagues have any additional point or points that they'd like to make here before we close this item for the evening? Commissioner Garvey?
Just one question for staff. Lisa, you mentioned that a response to comments document was going to be produced. Do you have an estimate as to about how long something like that might take?
Well, it really depends on the comments we receive, yes. And then we'd like to have that available at least 10 days prior to the hearing, and we'll notify anybody that makes a comment as to when the document's available.
Thank you. Very helpful. That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Others? Okay, very good. The callers that raised the left-hand turn prompted me to check back my notes, and I would just put out there, maybe it's a question for staff. Is there any plan for any kind of a rumble strip or barrier or way to delineate that left-hand turn, which also might serve as a deterrent to right-hand turns?
Yeah, it was, at this point, the recommendation was for striping and not for a median or anything raised. But we can take a look at that.
Yeah, I mean, it just occurs to me, I think we all know, and the one Solomon pointed out, reminder that at times of day, the people turning left onto Industrial off of Holly might find themselves backed up, and anyway, you could see a real jumble there at the busiest times, and it would be unfortunate to promote an unsafe acts if we could guide people with a little more clarity and avoid improper lane movement. That'd be great. So over to the experts to make sure they've covered it.
And we'll have the CEQA traffic consultant available at your next meeting as well.
Very good, thank you. Nothing else from me, so I think we'll call this item closed. Agenda item 9, reports, correspondence, and general information. A, report on recent city council actions. Andrea.
Thank you, Chair. On August 14th, this past Monday, as Lisa mentioned, the City Council adopted the mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring plan for 642 Quarry, as well as introduced the ordinance to approve the plan development and zoning, as well as the development agreement. And that is all I have for the last meeting for council.
Very good, thank you. Item B, Planning Transportation Commission comments or reports. Just one item for me, and that's a thank you to staff. We have had a busy year, a lot of activity. We only can be as good as all of the prep that you support us with, and so thank you for that. Just to all of your colleagues, let them know that we really appreciate the hard work you put in. Item C, correspondence.
Yes, there was one letter that was sent to you today from Debbie that she mentioned, and then there was also a postcard at the dais for you as well.
Very good, thank you. And just to confirm, the written comments will be part of the EIR draft response?
Yes,
They'll be
they will.
included, yes, good, thank you. And then last, planning staff comments, reports, and updates of current projects.
I do have a few things to mention this evening. The first is that we are sending some zoning updates regarding the airport land use plan. We've sent that over to CCAG for determination of compliance, and these are really measures we're putting in the code to address requirements that are in the airport land use plan. Once they determine that there is compliance, then those will be coming forward to the commission for review. We don't have a date for that yet. The big news is the 2023-2031 adopted element has been revised to respond to HCD's comments. It is now available for public review for 7 days, and that began this past Friday and will continue through Thursday the 24th, and that can be viewed at www.sancarlos2040.org. In terms of upcoming meetings for September 5th, which is a Tuesday because of the Labor Day holiday, we are planning on bringing forward the ADU ordinance revisions. You had a study session on that a few meetings ago. 2 smaller multifamily projects at 549 and 575 Prospect. For those of you who've been on the commission for a while, you might remember these from several years ago. They've been slightly redesigned, so it's a brand new approval coming forward. And then finally, a sign permit for 171 Industrial, and this is a requirement for the Planning and Transportation Commission to review any signage visible from Highway 101. And then also wanted to just take this opportunity to say thank you. I realize all the roles have remained the same, but we still want to thank all of you for your service and dedication. Chair Iacopone, thank you so much for your leadership and guidance, as well as your thoughtful analysis. And you know, we really enjoyed meeting with you ahead of the meetings and reviewing items. I think that's very helpful. Vice Chair Clements, thank you for your service and leadership and your expertise on housing and all the knowledge we receive from that is very helpful as well. Commissioner Garvey, I think this is your 3rd year starting on the RDRC. We love you on it, and Chair and Commissioner Roof also for helping with that. Very difficult job, and you're both very thoughtful and provide a lot of care in analyzing it, and I think it's been a real service to the community. So thank you, everyone, and we're looking forward to another exciting and productive year. And I think that is it for my comments. It is.
Very good, thank you. And with that, we are adjourned.